Dr. Robert Lustig, an emeritus professor at UCSF, specializes in neuroendocrinology, metabolism, obesity, and nutrition. He is a leader in the anti-sugar movement and has committed his retirement to improving the food supply for human well-being and the environment. Dr. Lustig graduated from MIT in 1976 and earned his MD from Cornell University Medical College in 1980. He also holds a Master's of Studies in Law from UC Hastings College of Law. He's authored books like Fat Chance 2012, The Hacking of the American Mind 2017, and Metabolical 2021. He currently serves as Chief Science Officer for Eat Real, advises on various boards, and holds roles in multiple health-related companies. We previously in a podcast discussed how life expectancy, quality of life, and health span are declining because we're witnessing an epidemic of chronic, non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, stroke, fatty liver, cancer, dementia, and then all the mental health issues such as addiction, depression, and anxiety, and then also the autoimmune conditions. And all of this is increasing in prevalence and severity. So today, I really want us to take a super deep dive into the 8 subcellular pathologies that are driving metabolic disease. And you refer to them as the hateful or the grateful 8.
Right. So first of all, Karen, if we spent any time talking about any one or all of those diseases, that would be, 10 hours.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to do that. We don't have the time for that. The thing that people don't understand is they think that those diseases that you just ticked off are the diseases. And the reason they think that is because that's what the doctors say. That's what the, ICD-11 codes say, when you bill, insurance. It turns out those diseases are actually the symptoms of disease. They are not the disease itself. And you'll notice that all of the diseases that you just mentioned have no cure. And the reason is because all of those diseases are actually the symptoms of a problem inside our cells. And we don't have medicines for those. And because we don't have medicines for those, doctors don't learn those. And because doctors don't learn those, patients don't know what they are. And so I'm going to tell you what's really going on inside all of your cells lead to aging, to chronic disease, and to early death. Okay, and you're not going to have heard of any of them.
Beautiful.
Okay, so here they are. And I call them the hateful or grateful 8. These are all processes that occur in your cells, whether you like it or not. The only way to stop them is to be dead. Okay? These are the normal wear and tear of your body. And the thing is that you can slow them down. You can't get rid of them. But the faster they go, the quicker you die. So when these 8 are being mitigated, you'll be 110 playing tennis. And when these 8 are going full force, you'll be 40 years old on a gurney with 2 stumps, on dialysis, waiting for your next stroke.
Yeah.
And of course, everything in between. So understanding what these 8 things are and how to slow them down, how to try to ameliorate them, how to help mitigate them is absolutely essential to good health. So here they are, the hateful 8. Number 1, glycation. Now, glycation is something that you all know. It is why you paint barbecue sauce on your ribs before you put them on the grill to get that nice brown caramel color. Turns out we're all browning all the time. It is a normal function of aging. And I can prove it. You can look at newborn rib cartilage, nice and white, and you can look at 88-year-old rib cartilage, nice and brown. Okay, all of us are browning as we speak. And if you had orange juice this morning, you're browning 7 times faster. Because sugar, specifically the fructose molecule, drives that glycation reaction. By the way, this is the same reaction that causes hemoglobin A1C. So this is what diabetics monitor. And of course, the lower it is, the better off they are. The higher it is, the worse off they are, because that is measuring that process in the bloodstream. Well, it's not just happening in the bloodstream, it's happening all throughout your body. And wherever it's happening, it's causing cells to be less functional and lead to earlier demise. And when they die, you die. So that's number one. Number two, oxidative stress. So believe it or not, we all rust. Now, iron rusts. The point is, you'd think, well, if you don't have iron, you don't rust. Actually, you do. You rust anyway. You just don't end up with a rust-colored product. What you end up with is basically dead cells. So oxidative stress is a normal function of cellular metabolism, but we take antioxidants in to try to mitigate that oxidative stress, that damage that can occur. So when oxygen meets proteins, you can get epoxides, you can get, oxygen radicals that will ultimately cause protein denaturation, it will cause lipid peroxidation, it will cause your cells to not work so well. And the goal is to try to mitigate that. Well, antioxidants will do that. So where do you get antioxidants? Well, you get a lot of them from produce, but you also get a lot of them from um, sulfhydryl groups, okay, because sulfhydryl groups bind these toxins and get rid of them as well. And that, of course, is found in good protein, not bad protein. So, for instance, cysteine and methionine are relatively low in abundance in protein, even animal protein. So, but in plant protein, it's even less so. So, oxidative stress. Number three, mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, your mitochondria are the energy burning factories inside each of your cells. Okay, they are designed to work at peak efficiency, but there are things that can slow them down. And when they have low maximum velocity, they're not generating enough ATP, which is cellular energy that's necessary to power your cells. And when your cells don't get powered, then you get into problems. Basically, you can have, first of all, fatigue. Second of all, decreased muscle strength. Third of all, uh, uh, several processes in the body require ATP to be able to be functional. Like, for instance, the barrier in your intestine requires ATP to be functional. So you can have breakdown of the barrier called leaky gut. So, and by the way, keeping the proteins in your brain in the right conformation, and when that doesn't happen, you have something called Alzheimer's disease. So mitochondrial dysfunction is a big problem. Now, there are several things in our environment that cause mitochondrial dysfunction, but by far and away, the overwhelming bad guy in terms of mitochondrial dysfunction is sugar. Now, it used to be trans fats, but now it's sugar. And sugar basically inhibits three separate enzymes involved in mitochondrial function, making your mitochondria work less well. Number four, insulin resistance. Now, everybody thinks, oh, obese people are insulin resistant, so obesity must cause insulin resistance. So everybody thinks that the reason for insulin resistance is obesity. No, it's the other way around. Okay? Insulin resistance causes obesity because the insulin resistance at the level of the liver causes your pancreas to have to make more. That raises insulin levels all over the body, and then that insulin shunts extra energy into fat cells. So the obesity actually is due to the insulin resistance. Turns out, when you actually look at diabetes, heart disease, all of these diseases, it's the degree of insulin resistance that determines early demise, not the obesity. When you factor out the obesity, the insulin resistance is actually a bigger player in terms of how sick you are. And lots of thin people are insulin resistant too. So it is true that 80% of obese people are metabolically ill. I don't argue that. That's true. But that means 20% are not. They are insulin sensitive, even though they're obese. Conversely, 60% of the normal weight population have the same diseases as do the obese. And when you look at their blood, they're insulin resistant too. So the question is, why do you get insulin resistant? And that's a complicated question. And there are several different ways that you can become insulin resistant. Yes, genetics play a role, but mostly it has to do with oxidative stress, damage at the level of the endoplasmic reticulum. And that's where proteins get synthesized and folded. And so it's known as the unfolded protein response or endoplasmic reticulum stress. It leads to insulin resistance because the insulin receptor doesn't get folded right. Number 5, membrane instability. Now, this one's kind of fun. All right, imagine a balloon, okay? And you blow up the balloon, and you put a knot in it, and you try to use your finger to poke a hole in it. Well, bounces right back. Now, if you use a pin, it'll pop. Okay, fair enough. Now take a second balloon, blow it up to the same level, put a knot in it, put it in the corner of your bedroom for 3 weeks. It'll deflate. Now, take that balloon, undo the knot, re-blow it up to the original size. Now use your finger, and now it'll pop. So it wouldn't pop the first time, but it'll pop the second time with your finger. How come?
Tell me.
The membrane has changed. The membrane has changed. Just from the pressure of the, of what was inside, the air inside, it caused the membrane to change, and now it is less flexible. So this is known as membrane fluidity, and it is occurring in your neurons, especially because your neurons are under pressure. There's stuff in your neurons that are basically causing expansion. And also that lipid peroxidation is going on, and that's what's keeping the membrane stable. So this membrane fluidity is a big problem. So the question is, how do you improve that? How do you keep your membranes happy and fluid, if you will? And the answer to that is omega-3s. Omega-3s are the hallmark of membrane fluidity. So if you're omega-3 deficient, you're going to end up with problems with membrane fluidity, and you might end up with numerous neurobehavioral problems, including depression and including Alzheimer's. Number 6, inflammation. Now, everybody knows that when you're inflamed, you don't feel good. That's true. Of course, that's true. But it's much more than that. The question is, where's the inflammation coming from? So obviously, when you get a cut, that's inflammation, but it's localized. It's not systemic. All right, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, generalized systemic inflammation throughout your body. And the question is, where's that come from? Well, if you have an autoimmune disease, that's where it's coming from, because your immune system is attacking the rest of your body. That's a problem. That's inflammation. But what if you don't have an autoimmune disease? Where's the inflammation coming from? Because everyone's inflamed now. Where's it coming from? The answer is it's coming from your gut. So your gut's a sewer, all right? It's got junk in it. It's got, SHI in it. Your intestine is supposed to present a barrier. It's supposed to keep the junk in the inside of the intestine and not let it get into the bloodstream. And it has 3 methods for doing that. It has 3 barriers in your intestine. The first one is called the mucin layer. It's a physical barrier. The second one is called tight junctions. It's a biochemical barrier. And then finally, there is Th17 cells. That's the immunologic barrier, okay, that are supposed to basically keep all the bad stuff out. Well, when that barrier breaks down, and it can be any one of the 3, so in the case of celiac disease, it's the biochemical barrier. Okay, in the case of emulsifiers, okay, which are in all ultra-processed food, it's the physical barrier. Okay, and there are various things that can cause immunologic alterations. And what we've learned now is that actually a high sugar diet causes Th17 cells to disappear. And so you end up with breaching of the barrier. And so The bad crap in your intestine ends up in your bloodstream, causing systemic inflammation and driving all of these chronic metabolic diseases as well. Number 7, we're getting there. Number 7, methylation. Now, methyl groups are either good or bad depending on which protein you're talking about. Okay, and they can also methylate DNA as well. So some proteins want to be methylated, some want to be demethylated, but methyl groups can be applied to different uh, uh, amino acids, and methyl groups can be applied to different DNA bases. And when that happens, it can either increase or decrease the production of whatever protein or whatever nucleic acid or whatever gene they are on. And it turns out that that can cause cellular dysfunction of various sorts. An example of this, there is an amino acid called homocysteine. Now, homocysteine is not one of the 20 amino acids that's used in the building blocks of cells. There's no codon for homocysteine. It turns out homocysteine is a toxic byproduct of metabolism. If you can't clear the homocysteine, it builds up and causes cardiovascular disease and also leads to aneurysm formation, etc. Homocysteine levels have been shown to correlate with numerous metabolic problems. So you need to get rid of the homocysteine. Well, the thing that will do that is if your methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme is working right, you can basically make that homocysteine go away. But you need the methyl groups to do it. When that reductase is not working right, then homocysteine levels build up, and then you can get metabolic disease from that as well. That's an example. And finally, number 8, my favorite, always best for last, autophagy. Now, some people have heard of autophagy now. Okay, self-eating, autophagy, self-eating. What autophagy is it is cellular recycling. It's garbage night for the cell. So, as we've talked about already, your cell makes junk. It makes stuff, okay, that has to be gotten rid of. Okay, in the same way you create, compost and recycling and trash every single day, whether you like it or not. It just happens just from life. All right. Well, your cells make junk, protein aggregates, lipid peroxidation products, etc. So the cell has to clear the junk out in order to make space for new stuff to come in. And when you don't clear the junk out, your cells swell and ultimately die. So autophagy is a way of keeping your cells lean and trim because you're getting rid of the junk. Imagine you live in a house and your garbage men go on strike. How soon before you're going to have to move out of that house? Maybe 5 weeks. Okay, and it's going to be a hell of a 5 weeks. First week, not so bad. Second week, starting to smell. Third week, the rats come in. The fourth week, the pipes get clogged. Fifth week, you're out of that friggin' house. All right. You need the garbage men, and autophagy is garbage night. And there are things that can slow that down and make it worse, and there are things that can speed it up. One of the things that speeds it up, for instance, is intermittent fasting. One of the things that speeds up autophagy in the brain is sleep. That's actually what sleep is for autophagy in the brain. And when you don't clear the junk out of your brain, guess what you get? You get Alzheimer's. So these 8 things are all normal physiologic processes. They're always going on around you. You don't know about them. They don't rise to the level of your consciousness, but they're going on. There are ways to figure out whether they're going on right or wrong, but we're not doing that routinely yet for patients. But there are things that you can do to try to make those 8 things work better. And it turns out all 8 are subject to food. If you eat the right food, those 8 will get better. If you eat the wrong food, all 8 will get worse. So these 8 are foodable, not druggable. There's no medicine for this.
I absolutely love this. What an incredible and powerful description of how to turn this hateful 8 into a grateful 8. And I love that quote of yours that these aren't actually diseases, and that they don't, well, describe them as diseases that aren't actually diseases and which don't have any medicines but diet. So diet is the key for us to turn these hateful 8 into the grateful 8.
Look, as a physician, I got trained in prescriptions and procedures. It
Yeah.
pains me to say this because, after all, I'm a doctor, people come to me for medicines all the time, but the fact of the matter is the medicines don't work.
Yeah.
And we have learned that over the last 30 years. The medicines don't work. All right. They treat the symptom. So yes, the statins treat the LDL. The LDL is not the problem. The
Yeah.
LDL is the symptom of the problem. Okay. The insulin or the oral hypoglycemics, they treat the high blood glucose. The high blood glucose is not the problem. It's the symptom of the problem. What is the problem is the insulin resistance underneath it and the mitochondrial dysfunction underneath it that's causing that hyperglycemia, hypertension. The blood pressure is not the problem. The endothelial dysfunction that's going on because of these 8 things, that's the problem. So in each case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to band-aid the problem. We're trying to bypass the problem. We're trying to, basically ignore the problem. The problem is underneath, and the problem is being driven by diet, bad diet. And so you can fix it by good diet, all right? And, doctors are not telling patients that, because number one, they don't understand it. Number two, if they understood that, then maybe the patient wouldn't need the doctor, would they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that this is an incredibly powerful way to end, and that the solution to turn these hateful into grateful is to focus on the true purpose of nutrition.
That's the idea. The true purpose of nutrition, as the World Economic Forum has agreed, is metabolic health. Metabolic health is the true purpose of nutrition. So fixing your cells is the goal. Not fixing your blood levels, not fixing your list of supplements or other
Prescriptions.
prescriptions. Okay, it is fixing your cells, and the problem is that those medicines can't get to where the problem is. They can't get to the mitochondria. So the only thing that does is food.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for coming on and being part of the festival. Yeah.
There's another thing
Oh, tell me.
before we finish. So people say, well, can't I exercise my way out of this? And the answer is, of those hateful 8, exercise will fix 4 of them.
Which are they?
So it'll fix the mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah.
It'll fix the insulin resistance.
Yeah.
It'll fix the autophagy, and it will fix the inflammation to some extent. But it won't fix the glycation. It won't fix the oxidative stress. It actually makes them worse. It won't fix the membrane instability, and it won't fix the methylation. So exercise is great, and I'm not against exercise, as you know.
Yeah.
And we both worked with CrossFit for how long,
Yeah.
okay? And for exercise, but exercise alone will not fix this problem. You still need a good diet.
So nutrition first, add some exercise to that, and you will be able to be in the very best health possible.
That's the idea.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. It's always such a pleasure spending time with you. I'm so grateful for all that you are and for everything that you do. You are a bright light in this space.
Well, I thank you, Karen, and thank you for doing all of this. That you've got a big megaphone, and I'm glad you're getting the message out there.
Thank you, Rob.